Sarah's frozen.
Poor Sarah's frozen. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Business Brunch. My name's Melinda Ward, and I am here today with, well, I was with Sarah Farmer, but she will be back. She's experiencing the dreaded internet failure. Vanessa Ashworth, and our special guest today is Danny Attias. And Danny is coming to us. He is the Chief Digital and Information Officer at London Business School, and has had a stellar background as IT leader in many different areas. And he is a motivational specialist in authentic leadership styles. So we're going to be talking more about Danny's background and asking questions in a few moments. But as you know, our main role here is to be your working from home team. So we are here to, give you support, answer questions, and just be that kind of kitchen chat that you don't get when you're working from home or when you're hybrid. So drop us a chat and let us know, who you are, where you're calling in from. And also, if you have questions for Danny, feel free to start queuing them up in the chat, and we will bring them in as we get into the main speaker portion of our session. Also, if you have anybody in your network who you think might really enjoy this chat with Danny, share now so they've got time to connect in and join the program. All right, so first up, welcome back, Sarah. Hopefully you're
so sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we can. You're clear now. Okay. I think you're on
I've got really bad internet connections. I'm currently on my phone, but I am going to drop out and come back in again, try and get back in on my computer. But I just want to say hi.
Okay. All right. We'll see you shortly.
I will come back in shortly. This is live. What can we say? Hi, Danny. I'll be back.
Yeah, it's like, what was it W.C. Fields said, never work with animals or children. I think technology also should probably fall in the mix now and again when you're doing live broadcasts. But anyway, we will follow our normal tradition of looping round and seeing what everybody got up to over the weekend, or in the past week, whichever is more glamorous, really, and exciting.
Well, we missed a week, haven't we? Because we had Easter in between, so we missed last week as well. So I think if anyone did anything wildly exciting in the last 2 weeks, then please let us know about it. But first of all, say hello in the comments.
Yes, absolutely.
Let us know you're there.
And so, Vanessa, what did you get up to over this little gap period over Easter?
Well, yeah, so much, madly busy. So I've started the new job. That's going amazingly well, and I'm loving every minute of it. But I'm going to tell you about Saturday. And that was, that I volunteer with a conservation charity. I'm also, for my sins, the co-founder of a community neighbourhood group. And we formed about 5 years ago in order to make closer ties with our community, and we organise events and to eradicate loneliness as well. And on a Saturday night, we held our second ever Ceilidh. So there was lots of stripping the willow and skipping around and jumping on each other's toes. And it was absolutely hilarious and such good fun. So yeah, that's my little story for you for the weekend.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was.
I had a bit of fun.
It wasn't as glamorous as your weekend, was it?
Oh, well, it depends on which weekend we're referring to, because Easter weekend, I did go to the final closing night of Secret Cinema's Bridgerton Ball. So it was another day of tiaras on the train. And then, but this past weekend, I went to a charity event, which was a performance of Schematic Theatre's Viper Squad, which is kind of set in 1989 New York, kind of like if you imagine like Miami Vice in New York, and the Viper Squad are trying to figure out, how to stop the bad guys.
Right.
But what made it interesting was, being a charity event, the actors, there's about 7 full-time, regular roles. They did roles in a hat. So an hour before the production, they put all the roles in a hat, literally, drew names of who was going to play what character, and just winged it. And so, as you can imagine, chaos ensued. But it was a fundraiser for the Mind charity. And Schematic Theatre is still running that show for another week in its normal format. So, yeah, it's really a lot of fun. It's quite silly.
Fantastic. That sounds great. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So
And
how about you, Danny? How was your weekend or week? It's gone past.
Weekends. Were good. I had a very busy year last year doing thousands and thousands of things, and I decided this year I'm just going to take it a little bit more slowly, not logging into work certainly at the weekends, and just spend time with my daughter. She's 16. Go see my parents, go and see my brother, and just spend some downtime. You know, a weekend with nothing in the diary is just perfect. Just it's been so busy last year and the year before that it was time to unwind, spend time with family.
Sounds
Excellent.
great.
I think, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot just recently because I've got this huge to-do list, and I keep thinking that at weekend I've got to cross things off. And then at the end, and this was Easter weekend was that, because I had the 4 days. I was volunteering all day the Friday, but then I had 3 full days to get stuff done. And I kept procrastinating because actually what I needed was a break. But I was worrying instead about all the things I had to do. And so since then, I've been thinking, I'm going to start scheduling time out. In the to-do list, I'm going to say, spend 2 hours reading a newspaper and drinking coffee and daydreaming, you know, and things like that. Because it's really important, isn't it? It's so important to take time out.
Yeah, it's essential for creativity and effective problem solving and all of that, I think. But we have some lovely people in the chat.
We do. So Danny is back. Thank you, Danny, for continuing to support us. So hello to Danny. We've also got Mandy Randall Gavin with us, and she says hi. And she also says brilliant to something that we said. And she also said, oh gosh, I think timeout was important. Oh, it was the tiaras on the train that I wanted to bring up, but it's just so that's Melinda traveling on the tube in London in her full Bridgerton regalia with a
Regency gown, tiara, whole works.
And what Sarah says she can get in this, but she can't get on Restream. Oh no. You carry on chatting. I'll see what I can do in Restream.
Sarah's getting the real life customer experience treatment.
Yeah, and we've got a LinkedIn user who could be Joanna Bell because she's often shows up as LinkedIn user. But if you're not Joanna, then please say hello in your comment if you're on LinkedIn. And we've also got someone from the Czech Republic. Michael has checked in. That's great. Welcome to our show. All right, so we are coming up on 12:40 quite rapidly. So while Vanessa is helping Sarah out with the tech logjam, we will start chatting a bit with Danny. Now, I've got a bit more of a profile here, and just so I don't mess it up or get anything mixed up, I'm going to mention a few bits of background. So Danny has been the previous global CIO for the Grassroots Group, and he was also in leadership positions in the IT departments of the John Lewis Partnership, as well as Marks and Spencer. So, he's seen a lot of things in his career and has developed some definite ideas around what works in leadership and what doesn't. And actually, this morning, Danny, you had kind of a fun experience, didn't you? What were you up to this morning? Let's tell the group.
This morning, I went into all-girls school to talk about digital and data. It was actually a follow-up experience, and this is quite typical. So I went a few weeks ago, and they had a careers day at a weekend, and you had people talking about architecture and law and pharmacy. And so the girls, the kids decided to go whichever session they wanted to. And my session only had one person, and it was a boy from a neighboring school. Which was fine. So we had a good chat. But the head of sixth form was there, and she's like, oh, we've got to get this message across, right? She heard me talk about digital and data, and that's going to impact the vast majority vast majority of careers in the future.
Yeah, everybody.
And she's like, it's not about being a computer scientist or a data scientist. It's really understanding the impact. So they got me back in today to talk to their sixth form. So it was a captive audience, which was great. But there were lots of questions, and some stayed behind for another conversation. So it was really good getting them to understand the legal implications of data privacy, getting them to understand data literacy, getting them to understand digital, and how most things are technology is kind of off the shelf. You can make that work for you, but how do you make it work for you? So be aware of those digital interactions. So it was a really good session this morning.
Yeah, that's something that's, I think it's so important that, kids start to learn, because as we were saying before the show started, I think people who have grown up with the internet and all of the benefits that it offers don't necessarily realize the scope and scale of data and how it's changed business back from the days of paper and pen and that glorious thing called the fax machine.
Well, the Internet of Things, interconnectivity, communications is all normal, right? It's just normal for this generation, and it's helping them understand what's normal and good and what's normal and bad, particularly on the social media side, and helping them understand what influence that they have to make a difference in their own careers and in the world.
Yeah, and I think that we're also just starting to learn and get perspective on the value that all this data can generate. I think we've captured lots of information over a long period of time, but we're not really super adept at the strategy of it and how to really maximize it. So what are your opinions on that?
So I tell you what I think about data. It's probably the most important thing right now, actually, for any organization. So much so that I have just launched a data apprenticeship at London Business School. So I work at London Business School, but I've launched a data apprenticeship for the staff. So nothing to do with the students at all, and invited any member of staff that was interested and that met the criteria, which meant you had to be full time was one of the criteria, because it's a day a week for a year.
Oh, wow.
So we're not talking about a half-day course or
Massive
a 2-day
program.
course. We're talking about a day a week for a whole year. 5% of the entire workforce have signed up, have now started their year-long data literacy apprenticeships. Some doing the fundamentals and some going deep into machine learning as well. And it's something that I tried a year before with my previous organization, Anti-Nolan, the blood cancer charity. And the same thing, 5%. 5% of the organization. So now we've got people all across the organization who are learning the fundamentals of data quality, data literacy, and almost none of them are in technology roles or have technology backgrounds at all, but they work with data. They're trying to make decisions, and they're trying to make sure that the work that they're doing is the good work. So this is a really, really great way. So I've kind of planted that seed. So a year down the line, I've got this incredible data army who can help us tackle our digital transformation.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, because even like Vanessa, I'm sure you've seen how data can really help in marketing campaigns and themes. And Sarah's back, yay.
No, absolutely. Data is so important, as you say. It kind of touches every job now. It touches, it touches everything we do now. And then learning to embrace it. Oh, she's gone. No. Learning to embrace it and to use it and to know how to respect it as well.
That's the word I was just going to say. Respect it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Value it. And be conscious and be honest about how you use it and why you collect it is really key. And I think the more transparency and honesty that you can present to your customers, the more they'll give and trust you with their data. If they know they can withdraw it at any time, if they know how it's going to be used, then they'll welcome, they'll give it up, because there's a value exchange there.
I think that is so important, isn't it? It's that transparency. If you communicate and say, this is why we want your data, this is what we're going to do with it, and this is absolutely what we're not going to do with it, then if you establish that trust straight away, then people will give you more as well.
Yes.
which gives you a whole richer picture to draw on to do whatever it is you need. We've got quite a lot. Obviously, we've lost Sarah again.
We've got some comments though, don't we?
Quite a few comments. Let me run through all.
Yeah.
Let me go through all of them, and then Danny, you can pick out maybe the ones
Sure.
that you want to concentrate on. So Sarah said she's going to have to play from home, and she does ask, can she ask you why you're so passionate about authentic leadership and what it is? So we'll come back to that, because I know that's something that we want to move to. Waggy is back. Thank you for your support again, Waggy. Oh. I was surprised by the format then. Empathy, appreciation, serenity, trust, enlightenment, and resilience. How very nice.
Yeah.
Mandy said, you've got to embrace it. We're talking about data and technology, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Ash Mahmood says hello. He says, that's a great initiative, Danny. School leavers need as much guidance as possible. That's very true. Michael Rada says, don't you think that the power of touch is missing in digital and virtual words? Isn't unlimited digitalization, does it make us addictive? Oh, interesting.
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Danny says the key characteristics of authentic leadership, so answering Sarah's question, are dealing with purpose, values, and heart, building relationships, and humility. And Mandy likes the year commitment to the data literacy course. Oh, there's so many comments. We're going to be very busy. Michael says, why do you think 85 to 92% of data in data centers is being wasted and never used again?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And then, Danny comes in to help with that. He says he believes it's better to have and not need than need and not have approach to data in many businesses. And Sarah says she's so sorry, but she's just struggling to get on today. So hopefully we will, because Sarah was going to be the interview today, but we're going to have to do our best. Well, Melinda, I'll look after the comments. I'll do the easy bit, and I'll let Melinda lead. But anyway, lots of comments for you to go on.
Yeah, I really liked that. There was a question in here about, oh shoot, now of course I lost it.
There's two things, wasn't there?
There's the concept of authentic leadership, and then there's data quality. And of course, everybody recognizes data quality is important, but that doesn't mean we do it well. Do you have any, before we get into authentic leadership, which I think is going to be a much bigger topic, do you have any quick tips for people and organizations, Danny, to improve data quality and, for good reason, not just, for the sake of having random information?
Yeah, I suppose it's really all about your data strategy. So understanding what a data strategy is. And I've been educating myself, re-educating myself about what is a data. I've given talks about data strategy, but I'm like, but what is a data strategy? And data quality is a huge part of it, and security and integrity and purpose and North Star. There's some really good courses on LinkedIn Learning about data strategy, an hour and a half, and you get the fundamentals of it. And then I think it is about then the training. So this is where the apprenticeship comes in, is a really structured way of doing the training. We're using Multiverse to do that training, but there are other data apprenticeship providers out there. And the training is about, well, obviously where you're going to do your data quality best, it's the point that you collect it.
Yeah.
If you can get your purpose and your quality and your structure right up front, the cost is so much lower than trying to clean it up later on, because there might be gaps that you can't fix without going back to the customer.
Yeah.
So, but do those people know how to create a form? They're going to be going, oh, I need to create a form because I need to sell tickets for an event. So I just need dietary preferences, blah, 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 blah. But are they thinking about, well, what might they need further down the line? How can they connect the dots and so on? So I think it's in the training and the education of the people who are creating the forms, having standards for that data collection, and just being really ruthless about the quality up front at that point of collection.
Yeah.
And that will improve your quality as you go further down the line.
Yeah, when I've designed, forms and workflows and such, I've always been a fan for, required fields, because if you don't make it required up front, people aren't going to fill it out, and you lose that opportunity that you will never get back.
Agreed.
But likewise, you can't ask a million questions without having justification for it. So there has to be balance. A curated number of required bits is better than an avalanche of rubbish and incomplete data. So shifting over to the authentic leadership question that Sarah had, I've got a cheat sheet. So I'm going to look down for a moment to see, so I can be sure to get Sarah's question right. She's talking, she was wanting to ask about the importance of authenticity in leadership. And of course, that word, authenticity is being, and being authentic is being used quite casually at the moment. It's a bit fashionable. So why are you passionate about this topic, and why do you feel it's important? And if you have clarity on the definition of it that goes with that, that would be good too.
Yeah, I can't remember the names actually. There's a book written by two professors at London Business School about authentic leadership, and I'm not going to quote it because I can't remember the full expression. But what it's saying though is, don't use authentic leadership to just be brash and rude and just say what you want and what you think. Right? Authenticity doesn't mean that, but it means, I think the most important stakeholder is yourself. So are you being true to yourself? Are you being authentic with do you believe yourself? Or are you just saying what you need to say or doing what you need to do? Do you behave differently in that work environment that you would do in a social environment? Do you treat people differently to the way that you'd want to be treated yourself? And now that depends on yourself, right? Who are you and what are you like? Are you confident and outgoing? Are you shy and are you reserved? So you can't model your communication style on yourself, but you do want to be honest in that way. And so I suppose it's about leading with purpose. It's about leading with transparency. It's about creating an environment. What do you want from a role? You want to be valued, you want to be heard, you want to be empowered. That's pretty much it. You want to get paid, don't get me wrong, but these are kind of really
key, isn't it?
fundamental. But you're in the job, right? So you're getting paid on that basis. But you want that. If you're leaving because you're not being valued, you're not being empowered. And so and when people leave, you have to look at when you recruit people as opposed to when people leave. When you recruit people, go, well, I need someone who can do these jobs and have these skills. But when you look at your performing team and you say, what are the skills? They're completely different. They're completely different, right? You say, well, I need someone who knows Agile and can do a process map and knows how to code in blah, blah, blah. But actually, when you say who are your best performing team and what differentiates them, it's they take initiative, they share their voice, they take ownership, they volunteer. So you should recruit in that style, right? Because you can train a lot of that other stuff. So you should be prioritizing that stuff. Are they communicative? Are they supportive? And then provide them with those tools. And I think you can only do that by being very authentic. And how do you know what people are feeling? What are they thinking? Unless they're telling you, and they're not going to tell you if they don't feel safe. So we talk about psychological safety. So I know I'm winning at that game when junior members of my team call me out for a bad decision or a bad action or a bad email, right? So I know I'm winning if they go, so when they come up to me and go, oh, you're doing such a great job and what a difference this place is, I'm like, well, thank you, that's very nice of you. But when they say, I don't really agree with that decision, or why have you decided that? Because I think, then you're winning, because then they're getting a chance of being heard. And if you say, well, I've decided and that's that, your job is to do what I say, well, then you're losing, and then you're losing staff as well, or even worse, you're keeping staff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
If you just want a bunch of bobbleheads who will just go yes all the time, you're not going to innovate, you're not going to capture the true potential of the company, and you're not going to keep your customers happy either. So,
and I've witnessed and experienced it. So I've been in organizations where I'm the 5th IT director in 5 years, or the 4th IT director in 2 years. And everyone had lost the will to challenge. So everyone knows what's not right, what's right, what the right way of doing things are, but actually they're not saying anything about it. I'm like, well, why are you doing it that way? Well, that's the process. That's the way I was told to. I did flag it before, but I was told, no, I have to do it this way. And so then they're just suppressed and depressed. And
Yeah.
that's not
The worst statements, we've always done it this way. That's like
Yeah.
the worst excuse for doing something a certain way, isn't it?
There is, and also there is something about, and I kind of dislike this, but I've kind of figured out that it's necessary, giving permission. So I think, well, you don't need to. I had someone say to me on last week, actually, she said, oh, well, have you decided what I'm going to be working on? Or, maybe I'll ask. I'm like, I shouldn't be deciding. You can guide it. You can drive it. You don't need to ask. You can suggest. You can. And so sometimes I remember I've been in a meeting, all staff meeting, and I've said, look, guys, switch off your email, switch off your chats. Let's just be present.
Yeah.
And the feedback was, it was so great to get permission to not have to be on tap.
Yeah.
You shouldn't need permission for that. So it kind of felt really weird, given it felt a bit like bureaucratic, going, you're allowed to switch off your emails now. But actually, people do need to hear it. And that, so I'm going to segue actually into role modeling.
Yep. Okay.
So it's all about role modeling, right? So when I joined, I've been in current role for 6 months. And the first thing I looked at the diaries, and they were back-to-back meetings, including lunch breaks. And I'm like, don't you ever take a break? So I said, no meetings at lunchtime. And then I get meetings at lunchtime. I'm like, no meetings at lunchtime. Oh, but that's the only time available.
It's not available.
It's not available, right? What about 9 p.m.? That's available.
Yeah.
So role modeling, that really strict, and that's, it's just one example of no models. I don't send emails out of hours. I definitely don't send instant messages out of hours. Okay. If you're on multinational, if it's an emergency, there are different examples, but I use the send later function, and I'm not suggesting everyone does it and it's right, but I use the send later function so that the email comes in on Monday morning or Tuesday morning or Tuesday lunchtime if it's not that important, rather than being, you got an email from your boss on Saturday afternoon or at 10 p.m. What are you going to do? Even if you don't respond to it, it's still in there. You've gone and invaded that personal time, that family time, that downtime. So role modeling the vulnerability of, I made a mistake. I thought that was going to work. You told me it wasn't going to work. I still took the chance. You were right. It didn't work. So being really honest to share those mistakes, absolutely crucial, and encouraging people to share their mistakes as well. And just going, that's all right. And, there's a difference between a good decision and a good outcome. If I asked you, give me an example of a good decision you've made, you'll probably give me one that had a good outcome. But you can make good decisions that have bad outcomes. And you can make bad decisions that get good outcomes. It still doesn't make it a good decision. It was maybe an unnecessary risk. So really acknowledging a good decision when a good decision is taken, and acknowledging the outcome for what it is. And not being obsessive, oh, well, that didn't go as we expected, because not everything goes. And if you're not getting any bad outcomes, if you're not getting any mistakes, if you aren't getting any problems, you're not innovating.
Yeah,
Simple.
you're 100%
You're not taking any risks. And if you take a risk, you're going to fail.
Yeah, I find, especially for new or like, let's say, less experienced employees in a corporate setting, they're terrified of making a mistake. So therefore, they're terrified of trying anything that's not on the specific checklist that they've been given to do or something like that. So to your point of empowering people is super important. I think we've got some comments, don't we, Vanessa?
Yeah, so I brought Danny's up because he says there's a recognized irony with authentic leaders. They sometimes have to curb their enthusiasm, mute their frustration with colleagues, and temper their own radical commitments, which could be considered inauthentic.
So that's interesting. And it's so true. And I think as you move from a manager to a leader, but it doesn't have to, it can start at any time. It's be more coach-like. right? So have your moments where you come up with ideas and you make suggestions and you get really excited about things, but also be curious, be more curious, ask more questions, and coach often. There's a brilliant author, Michael Bungay-Stainer, who writes The Coaching Habit. It talks a lot about this, really simplifies the kind of whole methodology. And it's just that curiosity. And I think if you switch radically from the person who's doing all the talking, making all the suggestions, having all the ideas, to a really wholesome coaching style, then inauthenticity lies there, doesn't it? Because they're going to go, well, hold on, why aren't you saying anything? What's going on? This isn't you. Yeah. So you need to kind of work your way, but also, quite frankly, it will be fake, because if you're the person that's always thinking, suggesting, and correcting, you're not being true to yourself if you suddenly switch to a 100% coaching style. So what you do is you just do it in bits, do it in moments, and practice and get better. I set up a podcast last year called Sondership, and I set it up to force myself to listen and ask questions. Two things that I don't do very well: listen and ask questions. And it was great. For 1 hour a week, I was really focused on listening and asking questions.
And we've got some comments coming in from Sarah, who sadly her internet wouldn't let her join us live. For those of you who've joined late, she is there. It's just we can't see her. So Vanessa,
she says that what you do is underpinned about how you do it. Be more coach-like is great advice. And if you don't know how to coach, learn how. But I'm kind of nodding furiously to. I mean, Sarah said she was nodding furiously to what Daniel said. But I mean, yeah, I'm outspoken. I'm kind of full of ideas. I always get a bit giddy. And yeah, if I turn to 100% coach, that would be inauthentic. But I've got to learn to listen better. And as a leader or a manager, you have to give the job to your team to do. Otherwise, they never get to where you are. And you've got to empower them to do the work. And so we have to be coaches.
And in Michael Bungay-Stainer's The Coaching Habit, he boils it down to 3 things. Okay, and I've already touched on 2 of them, but the first one, which is what you've just referenced there, is be lazy. Be lazy. Don't give the answer.
Be lazy. I'm going to write it down.
Be lazy. Don't give the answer. Don't give the solution. Let them do the work. Okay, and then be curious. Keep holding on. And what else? And what other thing? And then be often, right? Use those skills. Don't say, right, we're going to book you in for a coaching session once a month, when every interaction, 2 minutes. Oh, have you got time? I was thinking about doing blah, 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 blah. You could either say, yeah, that's a great idea. You have permission to do it. Or you can just say, what do you think could go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mandy supports that. She says an authentic leader's job is to enable.
Yeah,
and that's
really hard.
Giving people the framework about what you want to happen or what you want to achieve, and giving people the tools and giving people the empowerment to go ahead and do it. Yeah, but I love that. I love that. Be lazy.
Yeah, and I heard about it from another guy called JP Courtois, who's a Microsoft board member, been there for 30 plus years. He runs his own podcast about positive transformation and leadership, and he came to London Business School and he talked about it. So that's how I got introduced to MBS and to Michael Bungay-Stainer and The Coaching Habit. And he's the one, you got this guy who's worth $250 million, right? And he's saying, I'm reading this book, I'm learning, I'm getting coaching. And you're just thinking, well, okay, he's consistently curious. Yeah. That says a lot, right? I don't know if you've read the 100-Year Life, which is written also by London Business School professors, but the next generation is going to have a 100-year life. So you don't stop learning at 16 or 18 or 22. And then suddenly think that you can tap out the rest of the 100 years based on what you learn in the Stone Age.
Yeah,
you have to keep learning, and you have to be curious, and you have to learn from others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some really good comments coming in.
Yeah. So Sarah says ABC, always be curious and coaching. Mandy says, don't give the answer when they're capable of finding out for themselves. And that was a thing. I used to have a team of 15 in a previous life. And I kind of found that everyone was coming to me with the problems all the time. And I started then, because otherwise I was kind of like overwhelmed with all the things I had to do and all the answers I had to find. I started pushing it back and saying, don't come to me with a problem unless you've got some ideas about a solution, and let's discuss potential solutions instead. And it changed the whole way the team was thinking, and it really empowered them to move forward. So this is great.
And I've always worked on the principle of making yourself redundant in your current role. Now that's a hard word, right? Redundant, and maybe there's a better word for it. But I speak to people at every level, and especially all these people doing the data apprenticeship, right? They're quite junior, the vast majority of them, and they're spreadsheet jockeys, right? So they are working on spreadsheets, spending most of their time moving data around, filtering, pivoting, but they're not spending all their time making decisions based on that. And the idea is that they make their current role redundant. And what I mean by that is, if you can either automate, simplify, or empower your role to be done more efficiently and more effectively, then the pessimist would say, but then I've done myself out of a job, right? And that's the person who's like not sharing information, not sharing knowledge. The hero puts on the cape and fixes everything. The optimist will say, surely any organization that sees me doing that will go, whoa, we've got other problems to fix.
Yeah.
And that's how you work your way. That's how you work. So I spend a lot of my time. I mean, I recruited my replacement within a few weeks of starting my job, right? And I'm going to spend the next 1, 2, 3 years working my replacement up. And the more, and then as soon as they're developing skills, then you're trying to get them to find their replacement, and so on. And you'll constantly create this ladder. And it means, well, hold on, if I'm not just focusing on tech, I could focus on digital experience. I could focus on sustainability. I could focus on who knows what else, right? Problems come up at board level all the time and go, we need someone to really own that. We need someone to drive that. And so often, I mean, I often found myself like with my hand kind of stopping myself volunteering. I'd like never go to an AGM. You'll volunteer for a place on a committee. But I see things, and I've got 2 or 3 things right now that I go, I really wish I could own that. I would love to go to the board. I want to own that, but I haven't got the capacity. I'm only 6 months in. I haven't got capacity for it, but I'm going to give myself, another 6 months, maybe 12, so I can start to take some more ownership for those things that aren't technology.
Yeah, it is really important. I think the succession planning, and was it Danny has mentioned it as well in the comments. It's super important because what it also does is it gives you the ability, as you say, to take on those extra challenges and to identify ways to help the organization, whether it's a company or a learning institution, grow and get better instead of just doing what you've always done. Yeah. And people need that headspace to do that. And if you're not automating and building your succession, whether it's through automation or through people, then you don't get the opportunity to make that big difference.
Yeah. So Mandy asks, are they aware, this person, that they are your replacement? They do. I'll absolutely love that. Interesting. Yeah. I think it's such a good idea to recruit your replacement early on.
You know what?
There's always so much to do, isn't there?
My boss knows.
Yeah. Good.
So the conversation I have with my boss is, look, if you don't think it's working out, just let me know. Don't have to worry about it. You don't have to plan a scheme with HR. Just let me know. My replacement's already there, ready to go whenever you need it. So I'm here because I want to be here and because you want me to be here, and let's just do great work. But if at any point either of those falter, then either of us can just put our hand up and say, you know what, it's not working out. There's something seriously empowering.
Yeah.
And I know this comes from privilege, right? I know that this comes from knowing that I can get another role, right? Knowing that I've got the education, the experience to get another role. But even from a very young age, I was in one role in a high street retailer, not for very long. So it wasn't the partnership, John Lewis partnership. And it was terrible. It was truly terrible. In that moment, it was truly terrible. And I had the option to walk away without a job to go to. And that empowerment has actually been a defining moment to say, do not live beyond your means. Because if I allow myself to live beyond my means, which, you know, you generally, people earn this much and they live here, wherever you are, right? Whether that's, you know, paying the gas and electricity bill, or whether it's buying a bigger yacht. Okay. But people tend to live slightly beyond their means, and it never stops. It never, ever stops. They just keep going. And I kind of made a real conscious decision at a very young age to try and do that. Try and be the opposite. And that buffer is freedom. That buffer is the ability to choose where you are, and the option to walk away if you have to walk away. And then that can give you a lot more, you get a lot of power in that, because I haven't had an employer in the last 15 years that didn't know that I was only there because I chose to be there. Mm-hmm. And then we can work together and deliver some great things. And I want my own team, right? If they don't want to be there, they're all really skilled, credible people who can go out and get a job tomorrow, right? They should go and find a better job. If they're not happy and they don't feel they've got the opportunity and we can't fix it, then they should find that. And I just think that's just so important. And I always say to team members, again, you know, if you're not happy, if you're thinking about changing, let's have a conversation. Sometimes I'll help you write your CV and put in a reference for you. And sometimes I'll fix the problem and turn it around and empower you.
Or even or even find a different role within the organization. Because I've had people who came into my consulting team thinking that consulting was a great idea. And then after doing it for a while, they found they didn't like the unpredictability of it. The, you know, finding out Thursday or Friday that you got to be on a plane on Monday aspect didn't suit them, but they didn't know until they tried. Yeah. But instead of just saying, right, bye, you know, it was an opportunity to find a better fit for them in the organization. And they stayed for years. So yeah, it's not a black or white. And I think those conversations are part of authentic leadership, is having that trust with your teams and the people you work with, that they can come to you and say, you know what, I've been doing this for a while. I don't feel challenged anymore, or it's just not what I want to do, but I've seen this other area that I am interested in. How can we get me there? You know, and people have to trust you to be able to have that conversation.
I'll just give you one other example. There's about 90 people in my team, and I met each one of them one-to-one. Half of them said, oh, I've never spoken to the CIO before, which was really quite sad. And at least two, when I said, what do you want to do? Broke down, because they'd never been asked in 1 or 2 decades. No one had ever asked them, what do they actually want to do? They're like, oh, there's an opportunity, I'll apply for that role. They're waiting for a role or an opportunity, and then they apply for it, rather than saying, this is what I enjoy, this is where I think I can add value. You know what, let's create a role around that in that case, and let's harness your superpower.
That's fantastic. Right, I'm aware we've only got a couple of minutes. So Sarah says the confidence in yourself has to be there for this ability to bring people in to replace you and have those conversations with your boss. And not everyone has it, but they can develop it. There you go. You can talk to Sarah about that. So I guess before we've got about a minute. Have you got any kind of leaving tips to leave with our audience about authentic leadership? Yeah,
I will, actually, triggered by Sarah's comment. So someone in HR said to me in my first job, you're very comfortable in your own skin, right? I didn't understand what that meant, because I was comfortable in my own skin. So it took me about 10 years to figure that one out. But I think, to Sarah's point, not everyone is necessarily as comfortable in their own skill, and they don't necessarily have that confidence. So I think the things that those people should be doing is, at the bare minimum, trying to get a mentor, if not a coach, right? As the bare minimum, to really unpack that. I coach, at any given point in time, I'm coaching 6 women in tech. So we have 6 coaching sessions once a month, and we kind of have a rotation. The other is kind of being honest with yourself and holding yourself accountable for your actions, and not thinking about what other people think. And then ultimately is that vulnerability. And the question is can you afford that vulnerability? you want to try and get yourself to a position where you can afford that vulnerability, so that you can take those risks. And part of that is, are you locked in, or do you have other options? But if you can create other options for yourself, then take a risk and show yourself. But again, look, if you're working for a leader that is the complete opposite of an authentic leader, then okay, that's a lot harder, and maybe that's not the right environment for you. And it's really the one thing I've learned, the last thing is really hard to change that culture from the bottom. In fact, I would argue it's almost impossible to change that culture from the bottom. You got to go to the top. So sometimes you need to go outside of your direct leadership to try and find someone a bit more compassionate to help. But I think, it's sad. I always thought I could change things from the bottom, and I couldn't. Not culture. I can change process and approach and projects and decisions, but not culture. It just doesn't work.
So Gary says, never forget people first, process last. But when it comes to changing culture, I agree. It's from the bottom, that would be very difficult. Yeah. So people are saying fascinating stuff. Thank you. Sarah had said brilliant show. She wishes she could have been here to talk to you, Melinda.
Yeah. It's absolutely been a pleasure having you on the show, Danny. The time has, as we had thought it might, just flown by, and we're actually a minute over. So apologies for those who are watching the clock. We're about 30 seconds over at the moment. Join us next week. We'll be back at the same bat time, the same bat channel.
I think isn't it the bank holiday Monday again?
It is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
So unless we do a special bank holiday show, I think we're off again.
Oh, that's right. I've completely lost track of time, it seems.
But the week after, we've got, where's my book? We've got Mary-Ann Sieghart, the author of The Authority Gap. Ooh, crashing.
Well, Vanessa is finding the, it's the author of The Authority Gap. Great.
Yes.
We've had some great comments. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We've had so many. We haven't been able to bring everything in, but we definitely read and appreciate every single one. And if anybody is curious about following Danny, do follow Danny on LinkedIn. He puts out a lot of good information there that you can get. And also, if you're not following Vanessa, Sarah, and myself, feel free to do that as well, so you can keep up to date on who is going to be in the hot seat next. So have yourself a great week and a great upcoming bank holiday weekend. Yay. And we will see you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.